I am Claire Mitchell, 28 years old, and the last time I spoke to my parents, they called me a disgrace to the family name. That was 3 years ago when I dropped out of medical school to pursue photography. Last Tuesday, I walked past a newsstand and froze. There, on the cover of National Geographic, was my face alongside my photo essay about climate refugees. My phone had 47 missed calls from my family. But before I tell you what happened next, let me know in the comments where you are watching from. And if you have ever disappointed your family by following your dreams, hit like and subscribe for more stories about choosing yourself over expectations. Growing up in Boston, I was the golden child of the Mitchell family. My father, Dr. Robert Mitchell, was a renowned cardiac surgeon. My mother, Victoria, sat on the boards of 3 different charities and never let anyone forget our family's standing in the community. Success was not just expected in our household. It was mandatory, and it came with a very specific definition. My older brother, Marcus, followed the script perfectly. Harvard undergrad, Yale Law, now a partner at a prestigious firm downtown. He married Vanessa, whose family owned half of Beacon Hill, and they produced 2 picture-perfect children who attended the right private schools. Marcus was everything our parents dreamed of, their proof that the Mitchell legacy would continue unblemished. Then there was me. I excelled academically because that was simply what Mitchells did. Valedictorian at my prep school, full scholarship to Princeton, acceptance to Johns Hopkins Medical School. My parents threw a garden party when my acceptance letter arrived, inviting every important person they knew. My mother had already started introducing me as her daughter, the future doctor. But there was a problem. I hated medicine. Not the idea of helping people, that part resonated deeply. But the rigid protocols, the sterile environments, the focus on treating symptoms while missing the larger story of human experience. During my clinical rotations, I found myself drawn not to diagnoses, but to patients' faces, their stories, the way light fell across a hospital room at different times of day. I had discovered photography by accident during undergrad. A friend needed someone to cover a campus event, loaned me a camera, and something clicked. No pun intended. Through a lens, I could tell stories that statistics and medical charts never captured. I could freeze moments of profound humanity, make visible what often went unseen. Throughout medical school, photography was my secret refuge. I would finish rounds and then spend hours editing photos on my laptop, entering competitions under a pseudonym, building a portfolio my family knew nothing about. I won a few small awards, had work featured in online publications, but kept it all carefully hidden. Mitchells did not pursue art. Art was a hobby for people with trust funds and no ambition. The breaking point came during my second year. I was assigned to the pediatric oncology unit, and there I met a girl named Sophie, 8 years old with leukemia. She had this way of finding joy in the smallest things, a sunbeam on her blanket, a funny-shaped cloud outside her window, the way her 4-pole squeaked when she rolled it down the hallway. With her parents' permission, I started photographing her journey. Those images changed everything for me. They captured something medical textbooks never could, the resilience of the human spirit, the way beauty persists even in the darkest circumstances, the stories that make us who we are beyond our diagnoses. When Sophie passed away 3 months later, her parents asked if they could have prints of every photo. At the funeral, they told me those images were how they wanted to remember her, not as a patient, but as their daughter, fully alive. Sitting in that church, surrounded by photos I had taken, I realized I was living someone else's life. The career path I was on would make my parents proud, would maintain our family's reputation, but it would destroy something essential in me. That night, I made a decision that would change everything. I called my parents and asked them to meet me for dinner. We sat in the same restaurant where they had celebrated my medical school acceptance, and I told them I was withdrawing. The silence that followed felt endless. My father's face turned red, that particular shade that appeared when hospital administrators challenged his decisions. My mother's hand trembled as she set down her wine glass. "You are throwing away your future," my father finally said, his voice tight with controlled anger. Do you have any idea what people will say? What we have invested in you? I tried to explain about photography, about finding my purpose, about the stories I wanted to tell. My mother cut me off. Photography? She said the word like it was a disease. You want to throw away a medical degree for photography? Claire, we raised you better than this. We raised you to be someone who matters. I matter now, I said quietly. Just not in the way you want me to. The argument escalated. Other diners started staring. Marcus arrived, summoned by a frantic text from our mother, and tried to mediate, but even he could not hide his disappointment. You are being selfish, he said. Think about the family. I am thinking about my life, I replied. My father stood abruptly, nearly knocking over his chair. If you do this, if you walk away from medicine, do not expect our support. Financial or otherwise. You will be on your own. That is fine, I heard myself say, surprised by the steadiness in my voice. I would rather be on my own pursuing something real than supported while living a lie. My mother's final words as I left the restaurant still echo sometimes. You are a disgrace to this family. We are ashamed to call you our daughter. The next morning, I officially withdrew from medical school. The administration tried to talk me out of it, mentioning my father's reputation, suggesting I take a leave of absence instead. But I knew if I did not leave completely, I would never have the courage to stay gone. I packed my apartment, moved into a tiny studio in a questionable neighborhood, and started applying for photography internships. The first year was brutal. My parents cut me off completely, not just financially, but emotionally. They did not return my calls or texts. When I showed up at Marcus's house for Thanksgiving, my mother opened the door, looked at me like I was a stranger, and said, "This is family only." Then she closed the door. I worked 3 jobs to pay rent and buy equipment. I waitressed at a coffee shop from 6 to noon, did freelance photo editing in the afternoons, and shot weddings on weekends. Every spare moment, I worked on my personal projects, documenting stories that mainstream media overlooked: homeless veterans, immigrant families, communities rebuilding after disasters. My friend Emma, a journalist I had met at a workshop, became my lifeline. She let me crash on her couch when rent was late, shared her industry contacts, and reminded me why I had made this choice when doubt crept in at 2 a.m. You are telling stories that need to be told, she would say. That matters more than your parents' approval. But there were dark nights when I questioned everything. When I was eating ramen for the 5th day in a row while my family dined at expensive restaurants. When I saw Marcus's Christmas card, their perfect family in matching sweaters, and knew I was not included in that world anymore. When I scrolled through social media and saw former classmates posting about their residencies while I was shooting birthday parties for rent money. The turning point came 18 months after leaving medical school. Emma called me with an opportunity. Her publication was doing a series on climate change refugees, people displaced by rising seas, droughts, and extreme weather. They needed a photographer willing to travel to 3 different countries over 2 months for minimal pay. It was exactly the kind of immersive storytelling I had dreamed about, but the timing was terrible. I had just started a steady gig doing commercial photography that actually paid decently. Take it, Emma urged. This is the kind of work you left medical school for. She was right. I quit the commercial job, sublet my apartment, and spent the next 8 weeks traveling to Bangladesh, the Philippines, and Honduras. I lived with families who had lost everything to floods and storms. I documented their resilience, their grief, their determination to rebuild. I captured moments of devastating loss and unexpected joy, children playing in refugee camps, elders preserving traditions in temporary shelters, communities supporting each other through unimaginable hardship. The work was challenging in ways I had never experienced. Physically exhausting, emotionally draining, ethically complex. How do you photograph someone's worst moment without exploiting their pain? How do you tell a story that honors dignity while revealing truth? I thought about Sophie often during those weeks, about how I had learned to see beyond suffering to the whole person. When I returned home, I had thousands of images and dozens of interviews. Emma and I worked for 3 more months crafting the story, selecting photos that would make people care about climate refugees not as statistics, but as individuals with names, histories, dreams. We submitted the completed essay to several publications, including National Geographic, knowing it was a long shot. Then we waited. Weeks passed. I went back to shooting weddings and corporate events. Life returned to its difficult normal. I had given up on hearing anything when Emma's call came. "They want it," she screamed into the phone. "National Geographic wants the whole essay. And Claire, they want to put one of your photos on the cover." I sat down on the floor of my tiny apartment, phone still pressed to my ear, unable to process what she was saying. The cover? People do not get National Geographic covers on their first major assignment. But apparently, the editors had fought for it, arguing that my image of a young mother holding her daughter above floodwaters while standing in their submerged home was the most powerful representation of the climate crisis they had seen. The issue was scheduled for publication in 3 months. I signed contracts, did interviews, attended planning meetings. It all felt surreal, like I was watching someone else's life unfold. National Geographic flew me to DC for a press event. Major news outlets wanted to interview me. Suddenly, the work I had poured my heart into was reaching millions of people. But I did not tell my family. What would I say? The people who called me a disgrace would not suddenly understand because a magazine validated my choices. Their disappointment was not about whether I succeeded at photography. It was about me refusing to be who they needed me to be. The issue hit newsstands on a Tuesday in March. Emma texted me at 7 a.m. "It is out. Go look." I walked to the corner newsstand, hood pulled up, trying to be invisible. And there it was. My photograph on the cover of one of the most prestigious publications in the world. My name in the credits. Inside, 12 pages of my work, my words, the stories I had traveled thousands of miles to tell. The owner of the newsstand, Mr. Patel, who had gotten used to seeing me browse his magazines but rarely buy, looked up. "That is a powerful cover," he said. "Whoever took that photograph has a gift." "Thank you," I whispered. I took it. His eyes widened. "You?" He grabbed my hand and shook it vigorously. "This is incredible. We need to celebrate." As I walked home, clutching a copy of the magazine, my phone started buzzing. First a few calls, then dozens. Voicemails filled my inbox. Texts poured in. Most were from friends and colleagues congratulating me. But scattered among them were messages from my family. "Marcus, we need to talk. Call me." "My mother, Claire, I saw the magazine. Your father, and I would like to speak with you." Even distant relatives who had not contacted me in years saw your National Geographic cover. Amazing work. I turned off my phone and spent the afternoon alone with the magazine, really looking at the work, remembering each person I had photographed, each story behind the images. This was why I had left medical school. This was what mattered. By evening, I had 47 missed calls. I finally listened to the voicemails. My mother's voice was carefully controlled. "Claire, this is your mother. We saw your work in National Geographic. It is quite impressive. We think we should discuss things. Please call us back." My father's message was shorter. "Claire, Robert Mitchell here. Saw the magazine. Call me." Marcus left the longest message. "Hey, Claire. Wow, National Geographic. That is huge. Look, Mom and Dad are pretty shocked. In a good way, I think. They have been getting calls all day from their friends who saw your name. I know things have been difficult, but maybe this is a chance to fix that. Call me when you can." I did not call anyone back that night. Instead, I sat with my thoughts, processing what their sudden interest meant. For 3 years, I had been dead to them. Now, because my work was validated by an institution they recognized, suddenly I was worth acknowledging again. The hypocrisy was stunning. Emma came over with champagne and Thai food. "We are celebrating," she announced. "No family drama allowed tonight." But as we ate and talked about the overwhelming response to the article, she asked the question I had been avoiding. "What are you going to do about your parents?" "I do not know," I admitted. "Part of me wants to tell them to leave me alone. They made it clear I was only acceptable if I fit their mold. Now that I am successful on my own terms, they want back in? That feels wrong." Emma nodded thoughtfully. "But another part of you wants to show them you were right all along." I laughed sadly. "Is that petty?" "It is human," she said. Just be careful. Reconciliation should not mean accepting their version of events. They do not get to rewrite history because you ended up on a magazine cover. She was right. Whatever happened next had to be on my terms, not theirs. I decided to wait, let them sit with their discomfort, see if their interest was genuine or just about managing their social image. 3 days later, my mother showed up at my apartment. I do not know how she got my address since I had moved twice since our estrangement. She stood in my doorway looking older than I remembered, her perfect posture slightly diminished. "May I come in?" she asked, and something in her voice, uncertainty I had never heard before, made me step aside. She looked around my small apartment, taking in the photography equipment, the prints on the walls, the life I had built without them. "Your place is nice," she said finally, the words stiff and formal. "What do you want, Mom?" She sat on my second-hand couch, hands folded in her lap. "I wanted to say that your father and I saw your work. It is very powerful. You have a real talent." "Thank you," I said, waiting for the but. "We have been getting calls," she continued. "Friends, colleagues, people from the club. Everyone has seen the magazine. They have been asking about you, wanting to know why we never mentioned that our daughter was a National Geographic photographer. And you did not know what to tell them. I finished for her. That was the real problem. Not that they had been wrong about me, but that they looked foolish in front of their social circle." My mother flinched slightly. "That is not entirely fair. Is it not?" I asked, my voice quiet but firm. "For 3 years, I was a disgrace. You closed the door in my face on Thanksgiving. You told people I was taking time to find myself rather than admit I was pursuing photography. Now I have validation from an institution you respect, and suddenly I am worth acknowledging." "Claire, we were hurt," she said, a defensive edge creeping into her voice. "You threw away everything we had worked for. Can you blame us for struggling with that?" I sat down across from her. "You worked for a medical degree? I did not realize you were the one attending classes, doing rotations, studying until 2 a.m. That was my life to live, not yours to plan. We are your parents. We wanted what was best for you. You wanted what looked best," I corrected. "What maintained the family image. You never asked what I wanted, what made me happy, what I dreamed about. You decided who I should be and called it love." My mother was quiet for a long moment. Finally, she said, "Perhaps we were not as understanding as we could have been." It was not an apology, not really. Just a slight crack in the armor of Mitchell family pride. But it was more than I had expected. "Where is Dad?" I asked. "He wanted to come," she admitted. "But he is stubborn. You know how he is. He is proud of you, though he will not say it yet. He carries a copy of the magazine in his briefcase. His colleagues have been congratulating him." Of course, I thought. My success reflected well on him, therefore it was acceptable. If I had failed, I would have remained exiled. The conditionality of their love had never been clearer. "Mom, I am glad you came. But I need you to understand something. I did not do this work to prove you wrong or to earn my way back into the family. I did it because it matters to me. Because telling these stories, giving voice to people who are not heard, that is what I am meant to do. If you want to be part of my life again, it has to be because you accept who I actually am, not because National Geographic makes it socially acceptable." My mother stood, smoothing her skirt, a gesture I recognized from childhood when she needed to regain composure. "I understand." She paused at the door. "Your father and I are hosting a charity gala next month. We would like you to come. As our daughter, not our disgrace." "I will think about it," I said, not ready to commit. After she left, I sat for a long time thinking about family, success, and the price of choosing yourself. The National Geographic cover had changed my career trajectory overnight. Job offers poured in. Major publications wanted to work with me. I was invited to speak at photography conferences. The financial struggle that had defined my last 3 years was suddenly over. But the most valuable thing was not the recognition or the opportunities. It was knowing I had been right to trust myself. That the quiet voice inside me that whispered, "You are meant for something different," had been telling the truth. That my worth was not determined by whether my family approved, but by whether I lived with integrity and purpose. Emma helped me navigate the sudden attention. We are going to be selective, she advised. Take projects that align with your values, not just your bank account. You fought too hard to compromise now. She was right. I turned down lucrative commercial work to focus on documentary projects. I partnered with NGOs working on climate justice. I used my platform to amplify stories that needed telling. The work was still challenging, but now I had resources and reach I never dreamed possible. The charity gala invitation sat on my desk for 2 weeks before I decided to go. Not because I needed their approval anymore, but because I was curious. Could we find a new way to be family, one built on reality rather than expectation? The event was held at the Fairmont, the same hotel where they had thrown my medical school acceptance party. As I walked through the grand entrance in a simple black dress, I saw heads turn, heard whispered conversations. That is the photograph. The one in National Geographic. The Mitchell daughter. My parents stood near the center of the ballroom, and when my mother saw me, something in her face shifted. Not quite warmth, but perhaps the beginning of acceptance. My father approached first, his handshake formal, but his eyes betraying emotion he did not know how to express. Your work is remarkable, he said simply. Thank you, Dad. That was all. No apology for the 3 years of silence. No acknowledgement of the pain they had caused. Just 5 words that represented the most vulnerability Robert Mitchell could manage. I realized then that expecting them to fully understand or admit their mistakes was setting myself up for disappointment. They were who they were, capable of only what they were capable of. Throughout the evening, I met my parents' friends, many of whom had asked after me when I was exiled. They complimented my work, asked about my travels, treated me like I had always been someone worth knowing. My mother stood nearby, smiling, accepting their praise as if she had supported me all along. Part of me wanted to correct the narrative, to tell everyone how they had called me a disgrace. But what would that accomplish except more pain? Marcus pulled me aside near the end of the night. I am proud of you, he said. I know I did not say that before. I was caught up in the family expectations too. But you were braver than me. You chose your own path. It is not too late to choose yours, I replied. He smiled sadly. I have 3 kids, a mortgage, a wife who likes the lifestyle. My path is pretty well set. But maybe that is okay too. We do not all have to be revolutionaries. We hugged, and I realized that my anger toward him had faded. He had made his choices. I had made mine. Neither was wrong, just different. As I left the gala, my mother walked me to the door. Will we see you again? She asked. If you want to know me, really know me, then yes, I said. But it has to be on honest terms. I will not pretend the last 3 years did not happen. I will not act like your conditional acceptance is the same as love. She nodded, something vulnerable crossing her face. I do not know if your father, and I can give you what you need. But perhaps we can try. Perhaps as a start, I agreed. Over the following months, my relationship with my family slowly rebuilt itself into something new. Not the closeness some families have, but an honest acknowledgement of who we were to each other. My mother and I had lunch once a month. My father occasionally called to ask about my work. Marcus and I texted regularly. It was not perfect, but it was real. A year after the National Geographic issue, I gave a TEDx talk about following unconventional paths. I spoke about Sophie, the girl whose photographs changed my life. About the climate refugees whose stories deserve to be told. About the cost of choosing yourself and why it is worth paying. My parents attended, sitting in the back row. When I finished, I saw my father wipe his eyes, a gesture so unlike him it shocked me. Afterward, he approached me slowly. I was wrong, he said, the words clearly difficult. Wrong to make you feel you had to be someone you were not. Wrong to cut you off. Wrong to call your choices a disgrace. You are not a disgrace, Claire. You are brave in ways I never was. I hugged him then. This complicated man who loved me in the only way he knew how, even when it hurt us both. Looking back now, 5 years after leaving medical school, I understand that the magazine cover was not the validation I needed. By the time my face appeared on newsstands, I had already validated myself. I had already proven, to the only person who mattered, that I was capable of living an authentic life despite fear and opposition. The cover simply made it easier for others to see what I already knew. That worth is not determined by prestige or parental approval. That success means different things to different people. That sometimes the greatest act of courage is disappointing the people you love in order to become who you are meant to be. My work continues to focus on climate refugees, but has expanded to include other marginalized communities whose stories go untold. I have won additional awards, published 2 books, been featured in documentaries. But the work I am most proud of is small and personal. Photos I take for families who cannot afford professional photography. Workshops I teach for young people from communities like those I document. The mentorship I provide for aspiring photographers who face family pressure to choose more traditional paths. Last month, a young woman approached me after a talk. She was in her 3rd year of law school, miserable, but afraid to disappoint her parents by pursuing her passion for environmental activism. I told her Sophie's story. I told her about the day I walked away from medical school with nothing but a camera and a certainty that I was making the right choice despite everyone saying otherwise. "What if I fail?" she asked. "What if you don't try?" I replied, "Which regret can you live with?" She emailed me 3 weeks later. She had withdrawn from law school and accepted a position with an environmental nonprofit. Her parents were not speaking to her, but she felt alive for the first time in years. I understand that feeling completely. So to everyone watching who has ever been called a disappointment, a failure, a disgrace for choosing their own path, I want you to know this. Their limited vision of who you should be does not define your worth. Your courage to become yourself, despite their disapproval, is not selfish or ungrateful. It is the most generous thing you can do, for them and for yourself. Because when you live authentically, you give others permission to do the same. You break the cycle of conditional love and unrealistic expectations. You prove that there are many ways to live a meaningful life, and none of them require betraying yourself to make others comfortable. My parents and I will never have the relationship I once hoped for. But we have something better, honesty. They cannot understand my choices, but they have stopped trying to change them. I cannot meet their expectations, but I have stopped needing to. We exist in a space of acceptance, not agreement, and sometimes that is enough. The little girl in that hospital, Sophie, taught me more about life than medical school ever could. She taught me that our time here is limited, that we should spend it on what matters, that beauty and meaning persist even in darkness. When I photograph climate refugees, homeless families, forgotten communities, I am honoring her lesson. I am saying you matter, your story matters, you are seen. That is what I could not do as a doctor, but can do as a photographer. I can see people fully, capture their humanity, and share it with a world that too often looks away. So yes, my parents called me a disgrace. And yes, my face appeared on a magazine cover. But the second thing did not erase the first. The hurt they caused did not disappear because strangers validated my work. Healing was not about them finally seeing I was right. It was about me knowing I was right regardless of whether they ever saw it. If you are struggling with family expectations, with the pressure to be someone you are not, remember this. You are not obligated to set yourself on fire to keep others warm. Your dreams, your authentic self, your vision of a meaningful life, these are not negotiable just because others cannot understand them. And if those around you cannot see your worth until the world validates it for them, that is their limitation, not your failure. Have you ever had to choose between following your dreams and meeting your family's expectations? What happened? Share your stories in the comments below. If this story resonated with you, please like, subscribe, and share it with someone who might need to hear that their unconventional path is valid. Thank you for being here, and may you find the courage to become who you were always meant to be.